So what I want to do in the next 9 minutes is tell you what is this conflict I'm talking about, describe some of the implications of it for you, and leave you with 3 recommendations on how we might respond. So first, let's start with the conflict. If you lived on a beach and you got a tsunami warning, if you lived on a beach and you got a tsunami warning, you would likely gather up your family and run to high ground. If, however, you got this message that the water might rise sometime in the next 20 years, you might move with considerably less urgency. The baby boom generation is our tsunami, and the first wave is about to hit the beach. And this matters for 2 reasons. We have huge financial obligations to the baby boom in the form of Social Security and Medicare. And the second reason is because those obligations are mandatory. We have to pay for them, and we do that by taxing you. For those of you who don't know, Medicare is essentially health insurance for people over 65, and it currently accounts for about 13% of federal spending. Taken together with Social Security, 1/3 of all federal spending is spent on these 2 items. So what's the big crisis, you might ask? Beginning January 1, 2011, the baby boom begins to turn 65 and age into Medicare. If you don't know, the baby boom is 76 million people. 1 in 4 Americans is a baby boomer. If you do the math, 10,411 people a day will turn 65 every day for the next 20 years. And you pay for their health care. So for those of you familiar with the Penn State Dance Marathon, this is the equivalent of all of the people at Thon every day. For those of you not from Penn State, it's the equivalent of a full Madison Square Garden, plus a full United Center, plus a full Staples Center, plus all the people at Thon every week. Every month, the entire population of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania will become eligible for Medicare. And over the next 20 years, a population equal to 3 times the size of Texas will move on to the Medicare rolls. All of this begins 82 days from right now. When Medicare was signed into law in 1965, there were 6 workers for every retiree, and life expectancy at retirement was 5 years. Today, there are fewer than half of those workers per beneficiary, and life expectancy is longer than 12 years. What we have is both an imbalance in the amount of people working to fund Social Security and Medicare and the beneficiaries who are receiving those benefits. What we can expect to see then is that the share of the federal spending accounted for by Medicare will grow, crowding out discretionary spending on everything else, including education. And therein lies the conflict. The baby boom cohort is big, but there's another constituency that benefits from federal spending that's nearly as large as the baby boom. This year, there'll be 55 million kids enrolled in kindergarten through 12th grade, and that number will grow to 60 million over the next 10 years. Education is funded by a mix of federal, state, and local dollars. And as you can see, it's grown from just over $500 billion a decade ago to over $1 trillion today. So you may ask, what's the big conflict? Education spending is up, healthcare reform will surely slow the growth in healthcare spending, and all will be right with the world. But the reality is this level of spending is unsustainable. Cities are increasingly turning to states just to meet their payroll. States have balanced their budgets through stimulus fund cash infusions that end next year. And the federal government is managing the biggest debt in U.S. history. For the last several years, David Walker, the former Comptroller General of the United States, has been going around the country giving what he calls the Fiscal Solutions Tour. I want to share 2 slides from that talk with you. The first shows debt as percentage of gross domestic product. Note the dashed line at the bottom showing us today at 60%. Think of it this way. Every year we have to work until mid-July until the value of everything we produce equals our debt. We have reached this level of debt only one other time in our country since 1800, and that was during World War II. The second slide shows that today, the revenue taken in by the federal government only actually covers 4 line items: interest on the debt, Medicare and Medicaid, Social Security, and other mandatory spending. It doesn't cover any discretionary spending at all. And if you look at the revenue line over time, without significant change, revenue won't even cover the interest on our debt as the baby boom ages out. This sets up a conflict, I believe, between the healthcare needs of an aging population and the education needs of our kids. The big concern for me is this: President Obama and the Republicans in Congress have staked out two very different positions on education. But one thing that they both agree on is this level of funding is unsustainable. Something has to give. Here's the thing. Healthcare costs continue to rise, as does spending on education. But one of these groups represents a powerful voting bloc, accustomed to bending the system to its will. The other can't even get to the polling place without a car seat. If someone has to lose in this equation, I submit to you, kids and public education are the likely target. So what's the answer? I want to suggest that the answer lies in us collectively taking a third way. Here are 3 recommendations if these numbers lead you to the same conclusion that I come to: a looming tug of war between the generations. First, decide how you want to die and tell everybody you know about it. 40% of Medicare dollars are spent in the last month of life, much of it on high-tech treatment in hospital beds. As a former hospital administrator, I can tell you one thing: I don't want you to die in my hospital. I don't want your mortality statistic on my ledger. I'm going to do everything in my power to keep you alive, no matter the cost. You can change that by telling everybody you love, here's how I want to die, and here are the legal documents you need to advocate for me if I can't do it. In 25 years in healthcare, I have yet to meet somebody who says, here's how I want to die: semi-conscious, connected to machines, and unable to communicate with my family. Nobody wants to go out that way. But fundamentally, this recommendation is not about cost. It's about the tremendous emotional impact that comes at the end of life. I've stood beside so many hospital beds as families have struggled to manage the emotions of a lifetime, afraid of making a decision that might literally lead to the death of somebody they love, and doing it in an environment that's clinical and foreign. Do everything in your power to keep your family from this task. Second, engage in the education of your family and transfer your wisdom. I'm not asking you to adopt a stranger and teach them math. Act in your own self-interest by taking an interest in the education of the youngest members of your own family. If nothing else, take an active interest in the education of the people who will fund Social Security and Medicare as you age into it. Volunteer in schools, share your knowledge, and listen to your kids. And that leads me to my final recommendation. I recently took a course on tribal leadership with a man named John King, and one of the central tenets of this class was that you have the power to create a new reality by listening so attentively that what was once impossible becomes possible. I might be bending John's intent slightly, but here's what it looks like to me. John calls this listening into being. So, by carefully listening to the dreams of your children, your grandchildren, and your great-grandchildren, you create a space in the world for those dreams to become real. As I look out at you, I am certain that all of you have done this at some time in your life. Remember the moment by just listening. By giving credence to an idea, you saw a corner turned. A new reality became possible. Whether that person became an artist or a musician, a scientist or a teacher, the critical moment was the moment you didn't laugh, the moment your acknowledgement made the idea real. We face considerable challenges in the years ahead, as individuals, as families, and as a society. But perhaps more than anything else we can undertake to avoid fighting with each other over scarce resources is the simple act of acknowledging our shared humanity by listening. Thank you.
Thank you.